one way that I would describe this is to say, for instance, if I use each of my fists to represent a person, and let's say on my fist here, on one fist there is a wound, and on the other fist there is a wound. And so if the two wounds rub against each other, that's going to hurt both people. So in an interaction, you have person A coming with some unresolved issues, some trauma, and person B coming with some unresolved issues and some trauma. And as it so happens, the one thing that triggers person A is going to create a reaction that happens to trigger person B. And so at that moment, the two wounds are rubbing each other and both of them are in pain. And from person A's perspective, person B is creating that. And from person B's perspective, person A is creating that. And they're both right, And so how do you come out of that? And so that's that notion of, relational mindfulness, that is to be aware of, this is happening to me, in a sense of as the way my whole being responds in the interaction. And this is happening to B in the sense of their whole being responds in the interaction. So from that place, there's less of a sense of, by introducing that concept of interaction, there's less of a sense of blaming. You're always going to have that innate tendency to blame, again, which is kind of a normal reaction in a way to attack, to blame, to assign blame. But there's also that more mindful notion coming up of this is how my organism, reacts in the interaction. This is how their organism reacts in the interaction. And so there is at that moment both a sense of detachment from the intensity, but that detachment is more mindful because it's not detachment as mindless or detachment as disconnection. But it's really happening because you have engaged the mindfulness circuit, okay? And from that place, there is a way of actually being able to be together in resolving it, okay? Now, you notice, and then there is engagement in the mindful system. There is also connection. And of course, the two reinforce each other. As you're more mindful, you're more able to connect. As you're more connected, you're more able to be mindful. Okay, so you're then in a totally different paradigm because you have engaged in a different way of experiencing the situation. Okay, so yes, you can say in theory what it is, okay, so we're both in a system and paying attention to the space between or paying attention to the whole, environment. But actually what's happening is it's not just an abstraction to say paying attention to the whole system. You're aware of the system while also being aware of the actually, nitty-gritty of how it's happening. Okay. And because it's not an abstraction, then you have more of a grip on changing it. Okay. Like engagement is the same thing as if, you have clay and you're modeling it. Okay. So it's really very connected. And that's where the possibility of change happens. So change between people or change within oneself.